Everybody good?
I'm good when you guys are.
Let's get it.
All right.
You already know.
Let's get it.
Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with another one with my boys, Vlad, Barry, and today's somebody you guys probably see all the time every week. You know, you hear them on 98.5 of the Sports Hub. You hear them on Patriots Press Pass with, I believe it's Evan Lazar, right?
Yep.
You know, every week they do the post game. You know, I catch them on the breakdown. It's Alex Barth, man. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
You're doing great.
Thank you for coming on the show.
On
for real.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We appreciate it, man. No, it's like after all the Patriots games, I hop right on YouTube, and you know, you and Evan are live, and I'm catching, you know, the breakdown and everything that's happening. You have some really good insights, and you know, we're taking everything that you're saying and bringing it on our show and doing, you know, a bunch of stuff, man. So definitely appreciate the content from Alex for sure. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, me and Evan actually just got wrapped up doing today's show, so people can go check that out. And yeah, he has more of the insight. I just kind of yell and wave my hands, but I appreciate you.
I don't know, man. You seem to have a lot of knowledge, you know, about the team and everything that's going on, man. So, you know, it seems like, you know, I mean, of course, we're talking Patriots, and it seems like every week, right, we're having the next biggest week of the season, right? So now we got the Colts coming on this week on Saturday the 18th, you know, and now that's the biggest game to see, you know, if the Patriots are for real. What do you think about this week's game coming up?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a big game. I think it's certainly a good measuring stick. Part of what's really interesting to me about this game is you talked about there's been, you know, it feels like every week, big game, big game, big game. Well, the Patriots played the Titans, 2 years ago in the playoffs. They obviously are very familiar with the Bills. They haven't played the Colts since 2018, and that was a very different iteration of the Colts than we see now. So, you know, you can kind of go back to the Falcons game a little bit, and they talked about this before the Falcons game of having to prepare for a team that you're not as familiar with. Now, the Falcons just aren't as good. The Colts have some real talent on both sides of the football. So I think that, for me, is because whenever, like you said, when every game is the biggest game of the week, you have to kind of differentiate them. And I think what makes this game really unique to me is there's a lot of unknowns here. DeForest Buckner wasn't on the Colts the last time they played. Darius Leonard was in Indy, and he was a good player back then, but he was not the player he is now. On the offensive side of the ball, obviously Jonathan Taylor looks like a budding superstar. And then you have Carson Wentz. It's a whole new situation at quarterback. So there's a lot, and it by the way, it goes the same way for the Colts, right? The Patriots now have Mac Jones, they have Matt Judon, Christian Barmore, Ramondre Stevenson. So there's going to be a big sort of feeling out process in this game, and those games can get really interesting. So that, you know, overarching big picture to me, what am I looking forward to about this game? I think the unfamiliarity could make it really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the unfamiliarity. But I feel like the Colts team closely resemble our team, right? So they have their quarterback that they're not really asking to do way too much. As Carson's throwing it maybe like 20, 25 times a game, and then the rest is on Taylor, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you look at it, the Patriots, I think stylistically, the Patriots and the Colts, what they want to do are very similar. And then schematically, they go about it very different ways. But you're absolutely right. You know, there's this new mold of team being built in the NFL starting 3 or 4 years ago that teams are starting to realize that you don't have to risk drafting the athletic freak quarterback in order to succeed. Because for every Patrick Mahomes, you're going to get 20 Zach Wilsons. And I think teams are sick of taking that chance. And I think now what they're realizing is, hey, let's put that draft stock into other, other high impact positions, offensive tackles, cornerbacks. Let's do that. Let's use that cap money we'd save from paying that quarterback. Let's build up the defense. Let's build up the offensive line, and then just win low scoring ball control games. It's what the Patriots are doing, and it's what the Colts are doing too. Now, beyond that, it gets a little different. The Patriots are a man offensive blocking scheme. The Colts run more zone blocking scheme. On defense, again, the Patriots and Colts both win up front, but they do so in different ways. So, it's a really good point where the roster construction is very similar, and then it gets interesting because it's almost like they took, you gave them the same ball of clay and they molded it in two very different ways. So, but I think it is exciting in that, because I've been a big proponent of this for a few years now, and I wrote about this when Brady left back in March of 2020, that this was going to be the blueprint for the Patriots. And I got a lot of heat at the time because, modern era of the NFL, you got to throw the ball 50 times a game. You got to have an elite quarterback. And that still helps, right? Having Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. If you can get that guy, you go get him. I still would take Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow first overall. But I think there's now this recognition, and you're seeing teams, whether it be the Titans, the Patriots, the 49ers, right? They were within 2 Kyle Shanahan mistakes of winning a Super Bowl like this. I think there's now this understanding that you can win and be competitive, not just win games, but contend for championships in the NFL without having that elite quarterback. And like you said, I think it's a good example. These are two teams that are following that path and doing so relatively well.
Absolutely.
Man. You're speaking of, what everybody wants their team to be like, right? They got the quarterback that's throwing it 50 times, and we just came off a game where, we had a quarterback that's throwing it
different.
A little different. It hasn't been done in like 50 years, throwing it 3 times, right? Of course, the weather had a lot to do with that, and now we're going into a dome, right? So outside we had to worry about. Yep. Of course, the wind, the cold and everything like that. What do we have to worry about going into Indy, into the dome?
So I think, honestly, and look, this isn't to take anything away from the Colts, but as I'm doing my research today, Carl Cheffers was assigned as the official for this game. His crew calls the second most penalties of any crew in the league, and the most pass interference calls of any crew in the league. And this is something the Patriots will study and they will prepare for. They don't just prepare for the opponent. They prepare for all dynamics. So to me, that is almost like what the wind was last week, because football is all about the elements and outside factors, and you're not just playing the team on the other side of you. You got to deal with a number of different factors. The Colts, Bobby Okereke came out and said it today. They want Mac Jones to throw the ball. They're going to put the ball in Mac Jones' hands, and I would expect the Patriots have a similar plan in place for Jonathan Taylor and Carson Wentz, where they're going to try to make Carson Wentz beat them instead of Jonathan Taylor. So now here you have in a game where defenses are going to try to force the pass, the officiating crew that calls the most pass interference of any in the league. It's going to get really interesting. I think high-level secondary play is very, very important this week. You can't be too handsy, too physical, and they have physical corners. Rocky Ya-Sin, and I like him as a player, but he's one of the more physical corners in the league. This is a game where is that going to work against him versus a guy like J.C. Jackson, who's comfortable playing the ball without necessarily having a hand on the receiver, right? He's more of that Asante Samuel type, where he's fine being a foot or two away because he knows he can get a read on the quarterback, a read on the throw, and get himself in position. So, if you want to compare something this week to the wind, right? What is this week's wind? What is this week's third team? It's the officials this week. And that's not to say, blame the officials or anything. It's just, it's a factor that I think both teams will acknowledge, and it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out throughout the game.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
Definitely, yeah, and I think just not having the outside elements is going to be a very even game for both teams, because last week we were having conversations about last week, and I was saying I don't know how much this game means to both teams. I mean, obviously it meant a lot, but I don't know how much it was gonna tell you about each team, just because there were so many other elements impacting the game. And obviously it told us that the Patriots could win so many different ways and without even using the quarterback. But I've been struggling all year long to really grab onto the team and believe in the team and believe that the team can beat can be a top tier team. And I guess my question is, like, do you believe in this team? Do you believe this team can go the distance? Like, is this team gonna go to the playoff and get eliminated the first round, or win one game and eliminate the next round? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to tell this year. Look, I think it's not unrealistic to think this team can win a Super Bowl because there's no definitive favorite in the AFC, right? You can't show me an AFC team that you can say, oh, they will beat the Patriots. No matter what, they will beat the Patriots. Patriots can't get past them. And then when you get to that final round, look, I really like the Cowboys. I really like the Packers. I really like the Rams. Obviously, the Bucs are the Bucs. But you get to that final round, anything can happen. So that's kind of where I'm at with them being a true contender. I wouldn't rule it out. Now, at the same time, I don't think the Patriots are necessarily definitively better than any of the top teams in the AFC, right? I don't know that they can for sure beat the Chiefs. I don't know that they can for sure beat, the Chargers I really like, right? That's kind of where I'm at with them. I don't know that they can for sure beat the Bengals, but I know that they have a chance to get against all those teams. It's at least 50-50. So, I hate to kind of talk around your question, but I think a lot of it comes down to matchup and conditions, right? Who do they draw in the first round? Do they draw a Baltimore team that fell into a wild card spot because Lamar Jackson's hurt, but now all of a sudden he's healthy? Like, that's a tough draw, right? Do they draw a Bills team that now has seen them twice, and maybe Josh Allen's healthy and there's no win for that game, and it's, let's say the Patriots do manage to win the Week 16 game. It's really tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. It really is. It rarely happens. So, do they get the Bengals? I think the Bengals are one of the more, one of the biggest wild cards, pardon the expression, but one of the biggest wild cards in this playoffs, just because they're so talented, but they're so young that you don't know what you're going to get from them. So I don't think it's unrealistic to think they can win a Super Bowl. I don't think it's unrealistic to think they're one and done. I think a lot of it is going to be dictated by how the standings fall, what the matchups are, things like that, which is why, winning the division probably isn't just good enough this year. Right, you win the division, you get a home playoff game, but that's pretty much it. I think that bye is massive, and especially the fact that there's only one of them now. So you can convince me either way. I think there's still a lot of football to be played before we can really answer that question.
I completely agree with you. There's a lot of football to be played, and the matchup against the Colts will tell us a lot. The next matchup against the Bills will tell us a lot, and with the matchup against Miami, I mean, Miami is looking a lot better after losing 6 games straight. I think they're looking so much better. And I honestly don't even know if we can beat the Bills on a even playing field, because I think if the Bills had gone ahead and scored a touchdown, would we have trust Mac Jones to throw the ball, And I guess my question is, do you think we can beat the Bills on an even playing field?
What was that question again? You kind of cut out there.
Do you think we can beat the Bills on an even playing field?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think, when it comes to the question of, well, do they not trust Mac Jones to throw against that defense? I flip that into, well, what were the advantages of having him throw? And granted, if they trailed, then there's a clear advantage. And if they come out and then they run the ball, I think that's a red flag. Ultimately, we don't know what would have happened, but you're in howling wind. You have the lead. That Bills defense is pretty good, especially when it comes to defending the pass. I'm not really sure why Mac needed to throw the ball in that game. On a neutral field, it's close. I mean, it's certainly close, but, again, you can flip it and say, okay, well, the Bills couldn't beat the Patriots when they couldn't throw. Well, the Patriots couldn't throw either, right? The Patriots only showed the Bills half their playbook. They still have a whole passing design that the Bills haven't seen. So, again, it's not definitive. I can't sit here and tell you that the Patriots will be fine in Week 16 against the Bills. That game last night, right, against Tampa, even though they lost, I think the Bills got some
really good game.
Mojo back, but it's not definitive one way or the other. I mean, I think it was a really good game. I think the Patriots do have a good chance against the Bills on a neutral field. I think that they're relatively even teams, given some of the, the Patriots probably have more weaknesses than the Bills, but I think the Bills' weaknesses for what they are glaring. And they're very, very, I mean, they're not just weaknesses. They're, their potential, death traps that the Bills can fall into, the inability to run the ball, the inability to stop the run. The Patriots have some more issues, but they're more minor, and they can kind of game plan around them. So I think a matchup like that comes down to coaching. I think the Patriots have the coaching advantage, so I think the Patriots have a slight edge, but again, it's slight.
Yeah, I think for me, I was very pleased and amused by the game plan that Bill put together, but at the same time, it wasn't enough of a margin for me to be like, that was a great game plan. I think if anything had gone the other way, we could have lost that game very easily. But Barry,
Yeah,
for sure. No,
right.
I definitely agree with that, Vlad, that, particularly in a game like that, the margin for error was really, really slim and really small. And that, the Patriots legit had to, execute the game plan, you know what I'm saying, perfectly in order for them to win. That's a, obviously we know they're a game plan oriented team, as they've been, as long as Belichick is coach, and certainly, with the game plan that they had, they legit couldn't make, any mistakes that, were going to cost them a game. And luckily they didn't, do that. And, they executed it, well enough to win.
Made one,
But I think,
well, with
I
the
think
exception of that, right. That was on special team. It was a mistake. The Bills obviously got a touchdown, off of that, they killed Harry, muff punt. But, with the exception of that, I'm talking about from a, offensive standpoint, that I didn't really see, any mistakes, that were made. And it's crazy because, I didn't realize, honestly, with all due respect to the Bills, I didn't realize how soft that defense was, particularly, run the game. I watched them play the Colts. I saw what Jonathan Taylor did to them, and, absolutely went off for 5 touchdowns and then had over 200 yards rushing, I believe, that game. And, I knew obviously Patriots were going to have success and, be able to run the football really well against them. But who would have thought it would be to that, extent that they did. So it was just crazy to me that they were legit just attack that, like Alex said, potential death trap. That's not even a weakness. That's beyond the weakness. They just attacked it all night and ran it down their throat. Now, I wanted to ask you, Alex, what are your thoughts on what you've seen from Mac Jones so far, and also how the coaches, particularly Belichick and McDaniels, have handled him, from the beginning of the season to, this point of the season right now?
Yeah, I mean, I like what I've seen from Mac Jones. I think for any rookie quarterback, like a first-round rookie quarterback, I think the ultimate goal in year one, right, the ultimate box to check is just prove that you belong. Prove that you're an NFL quarterback, a starting caliber NFL quarterback. And, I feel pretty comfortable in saying, and I think just about every Patriots fan is pretty comfortable in saying that, we're not going to have to dip back into the quarterback carousel again in a year or two, right? I don't think that we're, I think the Patriots have their guy, and at least through this rookie contract. So honestly, the fact he accomplished is that in year one, for me, that's a win. Everything beyond that is just icing on top of the cake. And I think he's shown improvement, which is also important. You always want to see players get better. And he was clearly a little uncomfortable early in the season, right? Some of the turnovers, the fumbles, the interceptions, and some of that was the offensive line. But I think his cage got a little rattled, and credit to him. And some of this is the coaching staff too, that he got through it. They got him through it. He didn't develop any negative habits, and now everything's kind of coming together. I think the receivers have done a great job of working with him, specifically Kendrick Bourne. I think the chemistry those two have going back to training camp is outstanding. Really can't talk enough about what Kendrick Bourne's done for this team. And then how the coaches have handled it, I think it's the perfect example. When we talk about quarterbacks in the draft, and I was guilty of this last year, and just like everybody, I think we just like to rank, all right, who's your QB1? Who's your QB2? Which guy do you like the best? Which guy do you like the least? Who's the bust? And I think we leave out a very important part of the equation when we're projecting these players, and that, landing place is everything. Trevor Lawrence is incredibly talented. He's a really good player, but he's in the worst possible situation. It's not that Mac Jones
Right.
isn't talented. He's not Trevor Lawrence. I think he himself would agree with that, but he's kind of ended up in the perfect situation. It's nature versus nurture. And I think that the coaching staff has done a great job of not giving Mac too much, but also, and some people might push back on this, I don't think they've held back on him too much. I think they've tested him the right amount, because if you baby him too much, he's not going to develop and you're not going to learn anything. I think they've pushed him at times, mostly early in the season, maybe not as much late, but I think the Bucks game, the Cowboys game, they put a lot on his plate, and he stepped up, and for the most part, he handled that. So this is, is it the perfect rookie year? Maybe, I don't know. It's up there among the best ones. Andrew Luck's comes to mind. Russell Wilson's comes to mind. But if you want to write a textbook on how to handle a rookie quarterback starting week one, this is it. The Patriots have written it. This is what you do.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I definitely totally agree. Those are really good, points, and things that you bring up, with how the, Patriots have handled, Mac Jones so far this year, and certainly think they've done it the right way to this point. And like you said, fit is like everything. Like if you can have a great quarterback and, who has all the talent, but if he's not in the right system and not in the right fit, doesn't have like the right coaching, that's gonna mess him up and put him in a position, send him up to field, not putting him in a position to succeed. I also wanted to ask, what do you think the chances are the Patriots getting the number one seed in home field advantage in the AFC? What do you think about that?
I think they're pretty good. I think I saw last night they're like 47% right now, which is the highest in the AFC. If they win this game and then they can take care of Buffalo, they should be in good shape. And those are tough games, but Jacksonville, I'm not worried about Jacksonville. And even going to Miami at the end of the year, I'm not, that's not an automatic win, but I'm not overly worried about that. I think, again, you look at some of these other teams and you look at kind of how much parity there's been in the AFC. Their biggest competition to me is the Chiefs, who are playing amazing football right now. Don't get me wrong, but they've got a really tough schedule here down the stretch. The Bills have a couple of more tough games, including the Patriots. That game's obviously going to tell us a lot. The Ravens have some tough games, and again, we don't know what's going on with Lamar Jackson. So I like the Patriots' chances. I don't love them. I like them. They still got to take care of business here. They got two big games coming up, but it's well within reach. I'm not going to fault them if they don't get it. I'm not going to say they blow it if they didn't get it, but it's certainly within reach. It's certainly a realistic possibility.
For sure. I was going to say, Joe, did you want to ask when I did have another one?
Go ahead, Barry.
So from, pretty much the remainder of the season in particular, let's just say these next two games, since, we just talked about how big, these games and significant they are to the season and their playoff positioning. What do you need to see from them, from the Patriots, that's going to make you that confidently and definitively say this team is a Super Bowl contending? This team can really go on a deep playoff run this year. What do you need to see from this team to be able to have more confidence in that?
So the turnaround, right, from the 2-4 start to the 7-game winning streak, the biggest, the starkest difference between those two stretches is the turnovers. They're creating more turnovers on defense. They're not turning the ball over on offense. And so that I continue to see that, continue to win the turnover battle, because that's the way this team is built, kind of like I talked about earlier on. They don't have possessions to throw away. Every possession is crucial. The fewer possessions that happen in the game for both teams, the better, the more that plays into the Patriots' hands. So I don't know if you're looking for something new. I don't know that there's much new that I'm expecting to see. Maybe getting Jonnu Smith more involved would be the one thing, seeing if they can kind of get him more into the offense. But outside of that, I think the biggest thing here to look for down the stretch, how legitimate are these Patriots? Are they forcing turnovers on defense? Are they holding on to the ball on offense? If they can continue to do those two things, they can run with any team in the league.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think, when Bill was putting the team together, we spent so much money. We thought that, the guys that came in, it was going to take us a while, like gel, especially, guys on the offensive side of the ball, with the playbook being, as complex as it is. And then we had a guy like Kendrick Bourne come on the team, and I watched his highlights before he came on, and he's a happy-go-lucky guy. And to me, I'm like, these guys don't last very long when they come over here, And he's played so well, and I feel like is Kendrick Bourne like the best free agent receiver we've gotten since like a Welker and a Randy Moss here?
Yeah, I mean he's got to be up there. I'd put him right there with, Brandon Lloyd and Brandon LaFell. Those are kind of the two guys I fall back on when you talk about, the baseline. I thought those guys were good players, but I love KB, man. He's so fun to cover because, like you said, he genuinely enjoys everything that's happening, and he's somebody that in camp he told us that the playbook was a struggle for him, that he was having trouble picking it up, and he was really trying to put the work in, and clearly he's done it, right? He's been probably he's the top 2 free agent wide receiver this year. I'm blanking on the other, but statistically he's put up massive numbers and he's coming up in big spots, and I think he's developed into a much more well-rounded wide receiver than the guy he was in San Francisco. When they signed him, I was worried that, and not that he wasn't a good player, but I looked at it, I said, okay, so his player mold, right, his prototype, he's Jacoby Myers. And I just don't know that there's enough room for 2 of those guys in the offense. But now he's out here, he's turning into a yards after the catch weapon. He's turning into a deep threat. And they've really just maximized what he can do. And clearly they saw something when they signed him. Like, I don't think this is an accident that he's come here and his game has just exploded. They saw this coming. They evaluated him. They realized they could turn him into this receiver, and they've done it. So I think, he's not just for the production he's had, but from the player he was when he got here, to go from the player he was when he got here to the player he is now, that's you don't get many hits like that in free agency, where it's not just that he's good, but he's so much better than he was, right? You're talking about a guy like, I'm trying to think of some of the other examples of players they've done this with. Like Rob Ninkovich, right, was kind of just a journeyman player, and then he came here and he became this great pass rusher, right? Lawrence Guy would be another one who's just really elevated his game in New England. I would use those 2 guys examples. I put Kyle Van Noy is an excellent one. There you
go.
Yeah,
he was with the Lions.
Right. So they traded for him. Yeah, so he kind of falls into that category where it's not just they went out and they paid a good player and he kept playing well here. They really unlocked Kendrick Bourne, and it's a 3-year deal. There might be more to go. They might be able to unlock him even more than this. So I think when you go back and you look at it, you can't say anybody was a better free agency signing than Matt Judon, because he's just been so freaking good, right?
Ooh,
but Kendrick Bourne, I don't want to put Kendrick Bourne number 2 just because he's been as good as he has been, but if he's not 2, he's 1B, and I think most years he'd be their best free agent signing. So you love what you've seen from him, and yeah, he's a Matthew Judon shy of really being the home run. Maybe like dollar for dollar, pound for pound, he's the best signing if we phrase it that way, because they opened up the checkbook for Matt Judon. But Bourne's been up there too. Bourne's been excellent, a big part of what they do.
I think he's number 2 because I feel as though he's only been coming on lately, and that Judon's been doing it all year long.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but he's right there.
But he's been pretty good. I agree. Yeah. He's been pretty good.
Another thing I've noticed is there's been a lot of Patriots guys talking about playoffs throughout the year. I feel like, where before I really didn't see Patriots players talking about playoffs or positions and seedings and stuff like that. Has Bill Belichick gotten a little soft with this year?
I think it's how they're talking about it. None of them are saying we're going to make the playoffs. This is what we're going to do when we get to the playoffs. I think some of it is like there was some. I think it was Devin McCourty last week said something along the lines of, we still got a lot of football left to play, and we got to get things right now for a playoff push like that. Those kinds of things have always been said. Maybe the word playoff wasn't in there, but that idea of, you want to be playing your best football when you get to January. And then I think some of it, I think, and Bill Belichick can read people really well. And at least from the outside looking in, I think what he's figured out, because it's the identity this team has taken on, I think he's figured out that these guys really buy into the concept of big games. I don't think it's an accident that we're hearing that every game is the biggest game here. And to some extent they have been. But I think that, if playing a game up as, hey, this game has major playoff implications, I think if playing that game up within the locker room and kind of thinking about it in that context gets them where they need to be mentally, why not, right? They're not guaranteeing anything. And that to me is where maybe I draw the line. But, every team's different. Bill will tell you that. I think maybe in the past, just not even considering the implications of the game. And I could see that with how Tom Brady thinks. Not even considering the implications of the game, that was what they needed to do to get mentally right. This is the only game, and it's the biggest game because it's our game this week, blah, blah, blah. And there still is some of that. But I think, with some of these new guys, Matt Judon's a guy who talks like this a lot. I think the concept of, hey, this is the biggest game of the year, I think they feed off that. I think that that's something that helps them get where they need to be. And for Bill, if that's what works, that's what they're going to do. Like, he's not afraid. Look at the game plan against the Bills, right? He'll break tendency. If it's going to help them win a game, he'll do it, whether it's calling 48 runs or whether it's allowing kind of a little bit of a mindset to talk about the playoffs. If it works, it works. If it wasn't working, I don't think you'd hear him talk like this, but it's clearly been working.
Yeah. Last question for me. Last game, we saw Adrian Phillips go down, and since then I think he like tweeted, "Thank you, God," or something like that.
Yeah.
Any news on that, and how important is Adrian Phillip to this defense?
So news, not news. We asked Bill about that this morning, about him and Damian Harris, who also left that game early.
Yeah.
And Bill said, we'll see what happens. Generally, when Bill drops that line, it's trending in the positive direction. It doesn't mean that they're both fine and they're both 100%, but he'll sometimes tell us, oh yeah, so-and-so won't be out there. So I think with Adrian Phillips and with Damian Harris, I think at this point, no news is good news. And you just kind of move from that. Phillips is a tremendously important player, though. He's their fourth most used defensive player. He does so many things defensively, and especially this week. I think this week is a huge week for both him and Kyle Duggar, who we're still waiting for an update on with his COVID situation. Because what the Colts want to do is you need to stop the run against Indy to win the game. So they want you to put your big run-stopping downhill linebackers on the field, and then they'll come out of play action and throw the ball on you when you're in a base defense. And the flip side of that is, well, if you go smaller, you bring extra defensive backs on, they'll just run over you because they're bigger and more physical. The Patriots have these two very unique players in Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips, who are safeties who can stop the run. They can stop the run better than most safeties in the game. And that might kind of be a kryptonite for the Colts when you look at it, at least at eye level. Those are players that are going to give the Colts some pause. The Colts are really going to have to figure out what they want to do when both of those guys are on the field and lined up in the box. So, Phillips is a veteran leader for what he does. He's a tremendously important player to the team, but schematically, especially this week, I think we really see exactly the kind of dynamic he adds to the defense. If he plays, we'll see if he plays.
Fingers crossed. Hope so. We definitely need him out there. Like you said, he's been a big-time player for this defense and, and for that secondary in the back end, and definitely has, been balling this is and playing really well. So, and this is an important game and particularly a important, matchup where, like you said, they really need him out there. So my last question is kind of like an open-ended question. Who do you have in your top 5 Patriots of all time? Who would be on that list?
Ooh, who do I have my top 5 Patriots of all? So it's interesting because the Patriots have 4 different positions where they could claim to have the best player of all time: quarterback, guard, tight end, and kicker. So I guess I've got to go Brady. Yeah, Brady, Gronk, Hannah, Vinatieri's those are the 4. 5th, ooh. Randy Moss is the second greatest receiver of all time, but a lot of that's with Minnesota. So, if we're talking about just a 1-year window, like 2007 Randy Moss, he's on that list. If we're talking about career and guys who are actually here for a long time, I think, Andre Tippett. I don't know why I shouldn't have thought twice about that. Sorry.
Hall of Famer, again, right? There you go.
Andre Tippett retired Andre Tippett probably retired 3 or 4 years before I was born. Granted, he lives in my hometown now. Shout out Sharon, Massachusetts. So I would go, I think, to 4 who are the greatest all time at their position: Brady, Gronk, Vinatieri, Hannah. And I'm not doing this in order. And then Andre Tippett would be my 5th. And he's maybe Lawrence Taylor away from being at the top of his list as well.
I like that list. That's a great list, man. That's a very good list. And you've got good variety in there. You pretty much, covered everything on that list, man. So, no, I'm glad you remembered, the old school guys and, got the, new school as well and stuff. So, no, you definitely know your Patriots history, my man. I like that.
Last question.
I try.
Last question for me. Who was in the Super Bowl?
Who is in the Super Bowl? All right. I think ultimately, as much as I like what the Patriots are doing right now, the Chiefs have the best quarterback in the AFC. And 9 times out of 10, that quarterback's going to get you there, especially when he's as good as Mahomes. And I like the Packers. The Packers were my preseason Super Bowl pick. I think, they're all in. You don't know what the future's like with Aaron Rodgers. So I think we get a Super Bowl 1 rematch. I think we get Super Bowl we should have had last year. Chiefs Packers, and I think the Packers beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But I that AFC pick again, it's all up in the air. But I really like the Packers in the NFC. I do.
Wow. Well,
all right.
So you think Aaron Rodgers is gonna go to the Super Bowl in his so-called last dance? And in last year in Green Bay, he takes them to all the way to LA and to SoFi for for the Super Bowl. That's crazy. That'd be pretty insane if that happened. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna happen, but geez, what a storyline and headline that would be if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, I just think the Bucs are obviously great, but as we saw last night, their defense isn't what it was last year, and I think there's still some inconsistencies with that defensive unit. I like the Cowboys, but they're not quite there. They're the Cowboys, right? They're close, but you're not going to pick the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl. And like I said, I really like
waiting to happen. Exactly.
And like I said,
Stephen A. Smith says, they're an accident waiting to happen. Just wait.
Exactly. And like I said, I do like the Rams, but there's a lot of new pieces there. They've kind of struggled to incorporate some of these newer guys, Von Miller, Odell Beckham. I don't know that they're great on paper, but the Packers, there's that it factor. There's that it factor. It's not just Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams is playing exceptionally well. They're going to get Jair Alexander back here. And you're right. I think, Aaron Rodgers, I think he's so pissed off at the world that he's going to win a Super Bowl or die trying. So I'll take, we learned our lesson with Tom Brady, right? If you see a quarterback that's that pissed off, he's going to do some damage. So I like Rodgers. I do.
That's awesome.
Quick prediction for this game. I don't know if you gave us a prediction for this Patriots and Colts game, but how do you see it playing out? And do the Pats win this game?
Yeah, I have the Patriots. I think it gets sneaky high scoring. I think you're looking at 2 teams built on defense, but I think that the things are going to open up. Both offenses had 2 weeks to prepare coming off the bye. I think the Patriots win, by 7 to 10 points, maybe get into the third. I don't know. I try not to do score predictions, but let's call it 31-25 Patriots. We'll go there. I think they put some points up in this one. I really do.
Okay. No, I like that. I can dig that.
Hey man, Alex, man, it's been real talking to you. If you're watching this program, make sure you're following Alex at Real Alex Barth on Twitter. I love watching you. Like I said, I'm gonna keep watching you for your breakdowns and the post games of the game. So again, thank you for coming on Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Anytime.
Absolutely, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
You too. This was fun.
Right. Hope to have you on again soon, maybe for the playoffs or something. Right.
Absolutely. Just reach out. Let me know.
We'll do. Absolutely. Sounds good,
Cool.
man. Have a good night. Take care.
Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks.
Yeah, there we have it, man. Like I said, if you're still watching, make sure you're following Alex Barth at Real Alex Barth on Twitter, and I'm sure on all the other platforms as well. Make sure you're following us. Make sure you're pressing that subscribe button, that share button, that like the video. You know, however way you got on here, make sure you're liking it because somebody else like you might like the videos as well. And please make sure you're following us on social media. It's at ProFan Sports on everything except for Instagram. That's ProFans_sports. You know, so we're gonna keep this thing going, keep having guests, and you know, until the next episode, we'll holler at y'all. Peace out.
Peace. Oh, and real quick, just want to give a quick happy birthday shout out to my man, John Altidor, man.
Oh yeah.
Right, I had to mention that and make
I forget.
sure I showed you, that B-Day loving and gave you a shout out, man. So I know you
Appreciate you, man.
Big birthday coming up this week, and just definitely wanted to wish you a happy birthday and hope you have a great day and enjoy the the day and enjoy another year to come and another year ahead. So.
Yeah.
When is the birthday? Wednesday?
It's tomorrow, man.
Tomorrow? Wow.
Tuesday.
Tomorrow, there you go.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate y'all.
I hope you turn up and enjoy it, man. Live it up. Right.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, man. Absolutely.
All right. We'll catch y'all, man, on the next episode. What's the next episode?
Ooh, who's going to be on?
No. What number is the next episode?
91. I think
91.
this was 90.
Episode 91. All right. We'll catch y'all, man.
Yeah.
On the so much, I don't even know.
Sir. I know,
right.
Man. The numbers is going up. Just keep flying by.